Black billionaire spots. Little girl with his birthmark. What he learns shocks him. Avery Monroe didn't knock. She didn't need to. She had a key, a timeline, and what she thought was a future. Her black patent heels clicked across the hallway tiles as she pushed the apartment door open with the confidence of someone who believed she was about to walk into a celebration, not a war zone. Her final defense had ended only hours earlier. She was officially done with law school, top of her class no less. Her presentation outfit was still crisp, a white blouse tucked into a black pencil skirt, blazer slung over one arm, and a manila folder containing her thesis in the other. She hadn't even gone home to change. Her heart had been too full, her mind too focused on one thing, surprising Jared with the news. Inside, the apartment was dim. Curtains pulled. The soft glow of string lights blinked above the living room window. Romantic, out of place, wrong. Avery stepped forward. Her heels stopped, her world tilted. On the couch, Jared sat shirtless, and nestled beside him, wrapped in nothing but one of his t-shirts, was Tessa, her best friend. Her maid of honor. A half-empty bottle of red wine sat like a witness on the coffee table. Jared's hand rested lazily on Tessa's thigh. Their heads turned in slow-motion horror. Tessa flinched upright. Jared's eyes widened. "You didn't tell me she was coming," Tessa said, as if that explained everything. Avery didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her fingers tightened around the folder in her hand. Her voice, when it came, was calm and sharp. "I was coming to tell you I passed," she said. "Graduated. Today. I was going to bring you suya, a cold malt, and a list of wedding venues." No one spoke. "You knew how hard I worked for this?" she continued. "While I was spending sleepless nights prepping case briefs, you were here, celebrating with her?" "Avery, wait," Jared began, standing up. "Don't," she said. "Don't insult me with an explanation you haven't even rehearsed." Tessa clutched the hem of the shirt like it could hide her shame. "It wasn't planned," she whispered. Avery let out a bitter laugh. "But you didn't stop it either, did you?" Jared stepped forward, reaching for her. Avery stepped back. "You two deserve each other," she said. And then she walked out, still gripping her thesis folder like it might be the only thing keeping her upright. By 10:13 p.m., Avery was sitting alone in the back corner of a downtown lounge called Ember Ash. She had never gone drinking alone before. But that night, with her heart ripped open and her future ripped out from under her, she couldn't go home. Not yet. Not to the apartment where her name was still on the lease. Not to the wedding group chat that was still blowing up with dress ideas. She sipped from the glass in front of her, barely tasting the wine. Her hands were still trembling when a voice cut through the low hum of jazz and conversation. "Mind if I sit?" She looked up to find a man in a charcoal jacket and navy turtleneck, tall, clean-shaven. His eyes kind but cautious, like he didn't want to startle her. "I don't know you," she said. "No." "But you look like someone who doesn't want to be alone with her thoughts tonight." Avery studied him. There was no flirtation in his tone, just honesty. She gestured slightly toward the empty seat. "I don't even know why I came here." "Heartbreak has no GPS," he said as he sat. She raised an eyebrow. "That's supposed to be wisdom?" He smiled. "Just lived experience." She exhaled slowly. "You ever walk into a room and realize your entire life has been a lie?" "I walked into a courtroom once thinking I could win a case just because I was right." "That felt pretty close." She blinked. "Lawyer." "Something like that. Name's Nate." "Nathaniel King." She didn't offer her name, just nodded once. They sat in silence for a moment. Then he motioned to the bartender for another drink. "Wine?" "Red. but sweet. I don't need more fire. I need distraction, he ordered. When it arrived, he slid the glass gently in front of her. Not every day has to be about burning things down, he said. Sometimes you just need to breathe. She took a long sip, then another. I saved myself for marriage, she said out of nowhere. Waited for the man I thought I'd spend forever with, and now I feel stupid. You're not, he said. No? Then why does it feel like my entire identity just shattered because two people couldn't keep their hands off each other? Because trust is the last currency we trade in these days. They talked about everything. About nothing. About betrayal and loyalty and how dreams sometimes crash harder than reality. 1 hour turned into 2. She laughed. He listened. She cried quietly. He didn't judge. When the lounge closed, they stood outside on the sidewalk, the silence between them growing heavy. I don't want to remember tonight, she said. Then don't. I mean it. I want to erase it, all of it. Everything that led up to this moment. He looked at her. There was no invitation in his eyes. No assumption. I'll call you a cab, he offered. She shook her head. No. I want to go upstairs. He froze. Are you sure? She nodded. I don't know your last name. You don't know mine. That's perfect. Later, in the hotel room above the lounge, they didn't speak much. There were no declarations. No music, no passion play. Just two broken people lying side by side in a dim room, quietly surrendering to the ache of being human. When Avery woke up, the sun was just beginning to stain the edges of the sky pink. She got dressed in silence, scribbled nothing. Left nothing. She slipped out like a memory, and Nate never saw her again. But 3 months later, a pregnancy test would tell her that night wasn't over. And 5 years after that, a little girl with wild curls, too much sass, and a bent birthmark on her left shoulder would crash into a man in a law firm hallway and change everything. He'd ask her, "Who's your daddy?" And she'd answer, "I don't know. But Mommy says he must be rich because look at me." And that would be the beginning of the truth. A truth that was about to flip his world inside out. The box sat unopened at the foot of her bed. Avery stared at it like it might detonate. Inside were the remains of a life she no longer belonged to. A pair of champagne glasses etched with J.A. Forever. A calendar with circled wedding dates, and a ring box that now held nothing but silence. She hadn't thrown them away. Not yet. There was a strange power in preserving pain, like if she kept it close enough, it would eventually shrink. But nothing had shrunk. Not the pain, not the nausea, not the weeks of ignored texts from Jared, who tried calling twice before giving up entirely. Not even the whispers from neighbors at her parents' church, which followed her like smoke even after she'd left their house. It had been 6 days since she told her parents she was pregnant. 6 days since her mother had collapsed into prayer in the middle of the living room like a prophetess, weeping and asking God what demon had possessed her daughter. 6 days since her father packed her suitcase without a word and left it on the front porch with her name written on masking tape. She'd stood outside for an hour. No one came to the door. No one asked if she had eaten. No one said goodbye. By midnight, she was sitting on a worn couch in her Aunt Clara's living room. The old woman had answered the door wearing a bonnet, a mismatched housecoat, and one eyebrow raised like she already knew. "You pregnant?" Clara asked, arms folded. Avery didn't speak, just nodded once. "Well," Clara said, stepping aside. "Takes a whole lot of stupid to end up here, but takes a stronger woman to rise from it. Come in." And just like that, Avery was reborn. Not into a paradise, but into a slow, stubborn rebuild. Aunt Clara was an ex-labor organizer, a woman who once chained herself to the city hall gates for worker rights. Her living room was full of dusty books, framed newspaper clippings, and scented candles she never lit. She never pitied Avery, not once. But she did buy prenatal vitamins and a cheap but sturdy cot from the thrift store. "You're not broken," Clara said one morning as Avery sat in the kitchen, gagging over dry toast. "You're just cracked open. Now either you let the light in, or you let the dark swallow you whole. Choose." Avery chose light. Most days. By her second trimester, she had found part-time work as a paralegal for a neighborhood legal aid office. The pay was terrible, the cases heartbreaking, but the work kept her sane. She read motions in bed, built her baby registry during lunch breaks, and cried only in the shower. She refused to become a cliché, and then came the night she first felt the baby kick. She had just finished organizing case files when it happened, a tiny flutter low in her stomach, like a secret being whispered from the inside. She froze. Her hand pressed gently to the spot. There it was again. Stronger this time. Alive. Avery sat on the couch, tears running down her cheeks in absolute silence. She whispered, "Okay, it's us now. Just us." When Zoe Monroe was born, the nurses said she came out like a diva, full lungs, head full of hair, and a tiny fist already raised like a protest sign. Avery held her, stunned silent by the storm of love that crashed into her chest. And then she saw it, on Zoe's left shoulder. A small, curved birthmark, dark, crescent-shaped, shaped like a question mark that had bent just slightly out of line. The room spun for a second. Avery had seen that mark before. Once. Briefly, barely lit in the soft shadows of a hotel room. She hadn't even touched it that night. But she remembered. She remembered Nate. She still didn't know his full name. Just Nate. One night, one voice, one kindness she never expected. And now, this. Was it possible? She whispered to her daughter. "You're carrying more story than I know how to tell." Avery never searched for him. She didn't know how. There was no last name, no contact, no receipts. She had convinced herself he'd left the country the next morning, and maybe, just maybe, that was for the best. Zoe grew fast. By age 2, she was flipping through Avery's legal briefs and pretending to be a judge. By 3, she was correcting people's grammar and asking complex questions about justice. And by 4, she was walking through the world with her shoulders squared, like she'd been born to handle storms. But Avery noticed the way her eyes lingered on fathers at the park, the way she watched TV families with daddies like they were fairy tales. "Mommy, do I have a daddy?" "You do," Avery always answered. "He just doesn't know you yet." By 5, Zoe had decided her daddy must be a spy, or an astronaut. Or a billionaire. "He must be really busy," she said one day, munching on cereal. "Because I'm awesome, and if he knew that, he'd be here." Avery smiled, kissed her forehead and said, "He'd be lucky to know you." Zoe's birthmark became a conversation piece. Strangers commented on how unique it was. Avery once met a pediatrician who said it looked like something he'd seen once before on an overseas trip. She nodded politely, but inside her heart pounded. She often wondered what would happen if she saw Nate again. Would he even recognize her? Would he believe her? Would he want to know? But the truth always came back with force. It didn't matter. Zoe was here. And she would never, ever grow up feeling unwanted. One night, after a long shift, Avery sat on the edge of her bed and whispered into the silence. "Wherever you are, Nate, she's amazing, and she's yours, and even if you never know it." She didn't know that at that very moment, 4,000 miles away, Nathaniel King, newly appointed managing partner at his late grandfather's law firm, was staring out a window in London, sipping bourbon, and thinking about a woman with tear-streaked cheeks and a quiet storm in her voice. He had never stopped thinking about her, but he had no idea just how much of him she had taken with her. The first time Zoe stood on a chair in the kitchen and declared she was going to be a law boss like her mom, Avery dropped the spatula. It clattered against the pan, flipping eggs halfway onto the counter. But Zoe didn't flinch. She stood there, hands on her hips, pink pajamas covered in cartoon lions, and a confidence that didn't belong to a 5-year-old. "I'm gonna argue with people in fancy clothes," she said proudly, "and win." "Like you," Avery laughed, wiping her hands on a towel. "Baby, sometimes Mommy argues with people and still loses." "Then you argue louder," Zoe replied, dead serious. The girl was fire in tiny form. Born with no filter, no fear. She called out adults for contradictions, asked teachers to cite their sources, and once told a stranger at the grocery store that raisins are just old grapes pretending to be relevant. But her brilliance didn't shield her from the world. One Tuesday afternoon, Avery was called into Zoe's preschool. Miss Palmer, the director, met her at the door with a nervous smile. "It's nothing serious," she assured. "Zoe's just outspoken." Avery arched an eyebrow. Define outspoken. In today's circle time, another child mentioned their dad. Zoe responded by saying, and I quote, "Not everyone needs a dad. I have a mom, and she's twice the power." Avery chuckled. "She's not wrong." "No, she's not," Miss Palmer admitted. "But some of the other parents have asked if perhaps there's a better way to guide that kind of energy. Are they uncomfortable that my daughter doesn't come with a traditional family structure?" Avery asked, voice even, "or that she's proud of it?" The silence said enough. Back home, Avery made mac and cheese while Zoe colored at the dining table. "Miss Palmer said I'm too much," Zoe announced mid-doodle. Avery turned from the stove. "She said that." "Well, not with words, but with face." Avery knelt down beside her. "Zoe, listen to me. You're not too much. You're powerful. There's a difference." "But other kids have dads," Zoe whispered. "Even silly dads who forget stuff. I just have questions." Avery exhaled. She'd practiced for this moment, rehearsed it in her head for years. But now, staring into those curious brown eyes, every line felt insufficient. "Do you want to know the truth?" she asked softly. Zoe nodded. "You were made from love, not the kind people write poems about, the real kind." "The kind that shows up on your worst day, sits next to you when you're broken, and reminds you that you're still worth something." Zoe blinked. "So my dad's not bad?" "No," Avery said. "He didn't leave, didn't. He just never knew." There was a pause. Then Zoe frowned. "He should know." Avery didn't reply. Because she agreed. At the law firm where Avery worked part-time, she'd recently won 3 back-to-back cases in family law. Her reputation had grown fast, precise, passionate, relentless. But while her name started circulating in legal circles, her heart still carried caution like armor. Until one morning, she opened her inbox and found an email from Blake Howard LLP, the largest civil litigation firm in Atlanta. They weren't just offering her a position. They were inviting her to lead a new public justice initiative, a dream job. Zoe was sitting on the couch watching cartoons when Avery let out a noise somewhere between a gasp and a scream. Zoe turned. "What happened? Is it a mouse or an award?" Avery spun the laptop around. "Read the bold part." Zoe squinted. "We are pleased to offer you..." Oh, this is the big leagues, huh? Very big. Like, you need to buy new shoes big? Avery laughed. Yes. Exactly like that. They celebrated with pancakes and whipped cream for dinner. Aunt Clara, still sharp as ever, gave a toast that involved references to Harriet Tubman, Thurgood Marshall, and Cardi B. It was perfect. But something about the offer nagged at Avery. The firm had never reached out before. She hadn't applied. The invite came directly from the senior managing partner, who'd referenced her recent court performance and a unique recommendation from an anonymous advisor. That last part unsettled her. Who would have recommended her? She didn't have connections like that. The following week, Avery walked into the shimmering glass building of Blake Howard, her heels echoing in the marble lobby, her nerves wrapped in silk confidence. She wore a navy blue suit and a quiet determination. The onboarding was smooth. Her office was bright, modern, corner view. But the list of internal partners on her team made her pause. Nathaniel King. The name hit her like a sharp inhale. Her fingers hovered over the nameplate in the welcome packet. Could it be? No, Nathan was a common name. And 5 years was a long time. Still, something lodged itself in her chest and wouldn't let go. That afternoon, after meetings, she picked up Zoe from daycare early and took her out for ice cream. They sat on a bench in the park, Zoe kicking her feet happily while licking a chocolate cone with rainbow sprinkles. I like this new job, Zoe said between bites. Everyone there smells like success, Avery chuckled. What does success smell like? Vanilla and pressure. Avery laughed louder than she had in days, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was circling back. That night, after Zoe fell asleep, Avery stared at her daughter's shoulder. The birthmark. Still sharp, still shaped like a question. Still quietly screaming a truth neither of them had fully heard yet. And across town, in a sleek high-rise overlooking the Atlanta skyline, Nathaniel King read a quarterly briefing on a new hire joining his team. Avery Monroe. He paused, the name sparking something he couldn't place. But it was coming. All of it. The memory, the fire, the child. The truth. And nothing in his billion-dollar empire could prepare him for what was about to walk through his door. Zoe didn't like the daycare at her mom's new job. The juice boxes were warm. One kid chewed on a crayon and drooled on his own shoe. Another girl screamed every time she saw a squirrel through the window. And worst of all, the room smelled like milk that gave up. That was how Zoe described it, as she crossed her arms and glared at her mother in the lobby of the law firm's family center. I'm not staying, she declared. This place gives me itchy thoughts. Avery crouched to meet her daughter's eyes. Baby, I have an important presentation upstairs. This is my first week. I can't bring you with me. Zoe narrowed her eyes. Is the person you're meeting rich? Avery blinked. What? I just need to know if we're respecting him with energy or just a little nod. Avery fought the urge to laugh. It's a big deal meeting. So yes, full respect, Zoe huffed. Fine. But I want ice cream after, with gummy worms and double syrup. Deal. As Miss Chantel, the daycare supervisor, finally managed to lure Zoe into a beanbag chair with promises of coloring books and animal crackers, Avery escaped into the elevator, checking her reflection in the mirrored walls. She wore a black tailored suit and the weight of 10 years of resilience. On the 7th floor, she walked into the executive conference room where her new team was waiting. Legal strategists, senior partners, and at the head of the table, a man in a slate-grey suit flipping through a file. He didn't look up right away. His profile was sharp, thoughtful, familiar. Too familiar. Avery felt something in her stomach twist. Then he looked up. Their eyes met, and the room disappeared. Nathaniel King's breath caught in his throat. Her. The girl from the lounge. The one-night memory that had lingered like smoke in his mind for years. The one he had looked for in hotel records, in social media posts, in dreams. The girl whose name he never knew. Until now. Avery Monroe, he said softly, as if tasting the name for the first time. She held his gaze, her spine straightened. Her mouth set. Nathan, she replied, voice neutral, unreadable. You two know each other? Asked Malcolm Reed, a smug partner sitting nearby. Nathan tore his eyes from Avery and forced a nod. Briefly. A long time ago. The meeting continued, but tension buzzed under every word. Avery delivered her litigation pitch with laser focus. Nathan asked sharp but fair questions. No one else noticed the energy war pulsing across the table. When it ended, people filtered out. Avery turned to leave. Avery, Nathan said quietly. She froze, then turned back slowly. He walked toward her, stopping just shy of arm's reach. His voice was low. You left. I did. You never said goodbye. I didn't owe you one. He nodded, lips tightening. You didn't. But I never stopped thinking about you. She didn't flinch. You didn't even know my name. That's what killed me. For a moment, silence hovered like glass between them. Then she said, There's more you don't know. Before he could ask what, Miss Chantel's voice burst into the room over the intercom. Sorry to interrupt. We've got a little situation in the daycare. Avery's eyes widened. Zoe. She brushed past Nathan and headed to the elevator. He hesitated, then followed. Downstairs, they found Zoe standing defiantly in the hallway, clutching a red balloon like a trophy. A line of crayon marks trailed behind her on the wall. She escaped, Miss Chantel explained breathlessly. Said she was following corporate energy. Avery crouched. Zoe, what did I say about hallway adventures? Zoe pointed at Nathan. He's the one I bumped into earlier. He walks like he owns the place. Nathan crouched too. We met already, didn't we? Zoe nodded. You're the CEO. You're rich. Nathan laughed. Something like that. Then Zoe's shirt slipped slightly off her shoulder as she fidgeted with the balloon string. And that's when he saw it. The birthmark. A dark, curved shape on her shoulder, exactly like his. Nathan's world stopped. His smile vanished. He stared, blinking. Once, twice, heart slamming against his ribs. Avery, he whispered. She had already seen the look in his eyes. She stood slowly. Zoe looked between them. What's happening? Nathan stood up, voice shaking. That mark. She has my birthmark. Avery nodded, jaw clenched. Nathan took a step back, hand to his mouth. Is she? Yes, Avery said quietly. She's yours. Zoe stared at them both. You're my daddy? She asked. Nathan didn't speak, couldn't. He dropped into a nearby chair. Zoe looked at her mom. You said he didn't know. He didn't, Avery said, kneeling. Until now. Nathan looked up, tears threatening. Why didn't you tell me? You left, Avery said, before I woke up. Before I even knew your last name, you vanished, and I had a choice, to chase a ghost or raise a child. Nathan covered his face. Zoe stepped forward, tiny arms folding across her chest. You don't look like a cartoon, she said thoughtfully. So that's good. Nathan laughed through a sob. Then she added, but if you disappear again, I will sue you. Avery snorted. Nathan looked at her, and in that look, everything shifted. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something none of them were ready for. But it was real. And it was happening. Nathan didn't sleep that night. He sat in the living room of his penthouse condo, lights dim, a tumbler of untouched bourbon on the table, and Zoe's tiny voice echoing in his head. "You're my daddy?" He had run billion-dollar negotiations, cracked impossible legal cases, faced down media storms and political lawsuits, but nothing had unraveled him like that sentence, like that child. Like her eyes, which looked too much like his mother's, or the way her brow furrowed when she was annoyed, which mirrored his own. He barely remembered getting home. The whole elevator ride down from the daycare had been a blur, with Avery's voice taut beside him, Zoe babbling in the back seat of her car, asking if all rich people drive silent cars with no snack crumbs. And then she was gone again. Avery had looked at him before closing the door and said, "We'll talk, but not with her in the room." Now, he was alone with the weight of 5 missing years. And a daughter. His daughter. The knock at the door came just after midnight. He opened it to find his assistant, Reggie, standing there in sweats and a confused scowl. "I know you said not to call unless it was a legal fire," Reggie said. "But the system flagged something weird. Malcolm Reed pulled your personnel file and Avery's twice in the last hour." Nathan's spine stiffened. "Did he leave a trace?" Reggie smirked. "He always leaves traces." "Man still uses password 123. Nathan exhaled, jaw tightening. "I need every copy of what he accessed. Tonight. You got it." When Reggie left, Nathan pulled out his laptop and opened Avery's onboarding documents. Her application had no mention of Zoe. No emergency contact listed as a child. No photo. No hint. She had hidden her daughter completely from HR and from him, but now he understood why. The next morning, he arrived at the office early and waited outside Avery's glass-walled workspace. She was already inside, hunched over a legal brief, coffee in hand, hair pinned back like a shield. He knocked once. She didn't look up. "If it's about daycare escape protocols, I've already talked to Zoe." "It's not," he said. Her eyes met his. He stepped in, closed the door, and leaned against it like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Why didn't you find me?" "I didn't have your name," Avery replied calmly. "I was in the lounge for 2 more days. You didn't come looking either." "I tried," he said. "The hotel gave me nothing." "No name, no record. You disappeared like a ghost." "I had to," she said, voice soft. "I didn't know I was pregnant until 6 weeks later. By the time I decided to keep her, it felt too late. I didn't even know if you were real or just a moment." Nathan sat across from her. "She's not a moment." "No," Avery said. "She's my life. I want to be part of it." Silence filled the room. Avery studied him, her expression unreadable. "This isn't just about showing up and taking credit," she said. "Being her father isn't a title, it's a practice." "She's brilliant and blunt, and needs consistency like oxygen. You don't get to waltz in and be the hero now." "I don't want to be the hero," he said. "I just want to be there. Prove it." Their eyes locked. That afternoon, Malcolm Reed stormed into the boardroom like he owned it. His tie was crooked, his eyes sharp. "I'd like to raise a matter of professional concern," he announced, slamming a file onto the table. Nathan and several partners turned. "This firm has standards. We can't afford reputational risk. And hiring someone who concealed a child, an illegitimate child, from their employment documents is a liability." Nathan stood slowly. "Are you suggesting a single mother is unfit to practice law?" "I'm saying secrets like that don't belong in this firm," Nathan opened the folder Reggie had prepped. You mean like you're off the books consulting contracts with developers accused of zoning violations? Malcolm froze. Several partners looked up sharply. I wonder what the Georgia Bar would think about those, Nathan said. Or the IRS. Malcolm's face turned crimson. You're bluffing. I never bluff about ethics. Avery stepped in then, voice calm but cold. You want to talk about liability, Malcolm? Let's talk about how many interns you've quietly pushed out for not fitting the culture, or the female associates you've sidelined, or the fact that you accessed my private file without authorization. Gasps murmured around the room. I kept my daughter's information private to protect her, Avery said, not to deceive anyone. But you used it to try and hurt me. One of the senior board members stood. That's enough. Malcolm, we'll be reviewing your conduct immediately. In the meantime, you're suspended, effective now. Malcolm sputtered, then grabbed his briefcase and stormed out. Silence followed. Avery turned to the room. I didn't come here to make waves. I came to make change. And I won't apologize for being a mother or a professional. The board applauded. Nathan looked at her with something just shy of awe. Later that night, in a quiet park with Zoe running ahead to chase pigeons, he sat beside Avery on a bench. You were incredible, he said. I've had practice, she replied. Nathan looked at Zoe. She's perfect, Avery smiled. Yeah, she really is. Then Zoe turned, arms wide, and yelled, Come on, slowpokes. You're missing the sky! And just like that, the impossible triangle between past, present, and future began to bend. Not break, just bend. Enough to let something new grow. The fallout from Malcolm's takedown spread through the firm like a controlled fire, intense, swift, but strangely satisfying. Within 24 hours, his office was boxed up, his access revoked, and his name scrubbed from the leadership roster. A few whispered that Nathan had moved too fast, too decisively, but no one dared say it aloud. Avery, on the other hand, had never felt so seen and so exposed. She stood in front of the mirror that Friday morning, straightening her blouse, her reflection sharp and composed. But beneath the tailored clothes and quiet poise, her nerves twisted like wire. Zoe popped her head into the room. Can I wear my sparkly boots today, even if they squeak? Avery smiled. Only if you promise not to stomp down the hallway like a marching band. Zoe placed a hand dramatically over her heart. I solemnly swear to squeak with grace. At the office, the tension hadn't fully lifted. The partners greeted Avery with polite smiles and nods, but she could feel the question still lingering behind their eyes. Not about her work, that was spotless, but about her past. About the child, about Nathan. He hadn't said much in the days since the boardroom ambush, at least not about Zoe. He had kept their conversations professional, respectful, but there was something building between them, a quiet hum beneath the surface, like two tectonic plates shifting, preparing for something inevitable. That afternoon, Avery was reviewing a high-profile estate dispute case when Nathan knocked gently on her door. You got a second? She looked up, gestured for him to come in. He shut the door behind him, then held up 2 ice cream cones. Chocolate with sprinkles. For Zoe, he said, but I figured she's not the only one who deserves a treat after the week we've had. Avery hesitated, then took one. Nathan sat across from her. I meant what I said. I want to be involved. I want to know her, support her, be there. Avery stared at the swirl of chocolate and rainbow crunch. It's not about what you want, Nathan. It's about whether she can trust you. Whether I can. He nodded slowly. Let me prove it. Before she could respond, Reggie barged in, his expression tight. "We've got a problem," he said. "Big one." Nathan stood immediately. "Talk." Reggie held up his tablet. "There's an anonymous op-ed circulating online. Someone claiming the firm harbors unethical internal practices, specifically targeting Avery's hiring. They're implying you covered up your relationship with her." Avery stood too. "What?" Reggie turned the screen so they could see. The headline read, "Nepotism, Secrets, and Scandal at Blake Howard." Beneath it, a cropped photo of Avery walking beside Nathan and Zoe in the park. The angle was distant but unmistakable. Nathan cursed under his breath. "They were watching us." "It gets worse," Reggie said. "The article lists a string of supposed witnesses to your affair, claims that Avery manipulated her way into the firm, that the board's decision to fire Malcolm was a smokescreen." Avery's chest tightened. "This is sabotage." "It's Malcolm," Nathan said. "He's fighting back the only way he knows how, by poisoning the air." Reggie nodded. "But he's clever." "The article's not directly defamatory. It's loaded with speculation and phrasing like sources close to the firm. Classic smear tactic." Nathan turned to Avery. "This could hurt your reputation. Worse, it could put you at risk of disbarment if people start digging through the wrong lenses." Avery crossed her arms. "So what do we do?" Nathan's voice dropped. "We fight back. Quietly, legally, and on our terms." Over the next 72 hours, they built a case. Not in court, but behind closed doors. They traced the article's metadata, tracked burner email accounts, subpoenaed internal server access logs, and slowly, a picture emerged. A junior associate named Drew, loyal to Malcolm, had leaked the information. Avery found herself in Nathan's office late Sunday night, surrounded by empty coffee cups and documents. "You sure this will work?" she asked, scanning the final cease and desist draft. Nathan leaned back. "We don't just shut it down, we expose it." She looked at him. "You're not doing this just for me, are you?" He met her eyes. "No, I'm doing it for her, for Zoe. Because no one should ever use her existence as ammunition." Avery stared at him for a long beat, then nodded. The next morning they released an official statement, denying the rumors, confirming Zoe's paternity, and accusing the article of weaponizing personal family history to undermine professional integrity. The response was swift. To the public, it was a bold move, transparent, courageous. To the firm, it was war. Some partners bristled at the attention. Others rallied behind Avery. But the twist came 2 days later when a former intern came forward with a signed affidavit detailing how Malcolm had threatened to tank her career unless she spied on Avery. The affidavit hit the press, and the article's credibility crumbled overnight. By week's end, Malcolm was being investigated by the state bar. Nathan stood at the glass wall of his office watching the skyline when Avery walked in. "Your girl Zoe," he said. "She's fierce." Avery smiled. "She gets it honest." He turned to her. "There's still a lot to unpack between us. But for what it's worth, I'm proud of how you handled this." Avery nodded. "You know what Zoe said this morning?" "What?" "She said, 'Tell that man if he's serious about being my dad, he needs to show up to career day.'" Nathan laughed. "That's her version of a challenge." "No," Avery said. "That's her version of hope." And for the first time, Nathan realized he wasn't just trying to make up for lost time. He was building something entirely new, something worth protecting, something worth staying for. The conference room was packed. Morning light spilled through the high windows of the Blake Howard executive suite, but no one was admiring the view. The air was electric, the kind of stillness that precedes either a breakthrough or a breakdown. Avery stood at the far end of the table, her legal pads stacked with notes, her posture flawless. She wasn't just ready, She was sharpened. Nathan sat beside her, calm on the outside, but burning beneath the surface. Across the table was the board, half of them loyal, half of them uncertain, and at the center sat Elijah Brand, the firm's senior founding partner and patriarchal figure, his expression unreadable, his silence deliberate. "We've reviewed the latest developments," Elijah began, his voice deep and deliberate, "including the statement released on behalf of Ms. Monroe and Mr. King, as well as the affidavit submitted by the former intern. These are serious matters." Avery nodded. "And every word was chosen with care. We chose transparency because this firm claims to value it." Elijah glanced at the head of HR. "There are concerns." "About judgment, about the optics." "Optics," Avery repeated. "You mean the fact that I'm a mother, or that Nathan is her father?" "Both." Nathan sat up straighter. "Are we really pretending this is about professionalism? Because if this were a male associate hiding a child, no one would bat an eye." Elijah leaned back. "Nathan, your personal involvement, your emotional ties, may be compromising your objectivity." "I know exactly what this is," Avery cut in. "It's about discomfort. Discomfort that a woman like me walks into this building with a resume stronger than most men here. A child she didn't hide out of shame but out of safety. And now, because I refuse to play by the silence game, I'm being labeled as a risk." Elijah didn't reply immediately, but Avery knew this was the moment the knives would come out. And they did. Victor Langston, one of Malcolm's allies on the board, slid a folder across the table. "There are inconsistencies in Ms. Monroe's application, omissions that could be viewed as misrepresentation." Avery didn't even flinch. "I disclosed everything relevant to my role, my work history, my legal standing, my credentials." "You left out the child," he said, tapping the file. "I left out the personal because this is a professional environment," Avery replied. "Unless you're asking every male attorney in this firm to list the number of children they've fathered." That drew a murmur from the room. Nathan leaned forward. "Let's stop dancing around it. You're not here to audit policy. You're here to penalize a woman for making you uncomfortable." Victor sneered. "And you, Nathan? How do you reconcile pushing for her hiring without disclosing the truth to the board?" "I didn't know," he said. "Until a week ago. And the moment I did, I disclosed it." "Too little, too late." Avery's voice cut through. "You want to remove me? Do it. But know that you're not just removing a capable attorney. You're sending a message to every brilliant, overqualified woman who thinks maybe, just maybe, she has a place here." Silence. Then Elijah spoke, slow and heavy. "Enough." All heads turned to him. He looked at Avery, then at Nathan. This firm was built by people who risked reputation to stand for something bigger than themselves. And yes, we have standards. But we also have vision. He turned to the board. "I will not remove Ms. Monroe. Nor will I entertain further disciplinary talk unless new evidence emerges." Victor opened his mouth to object, but Elijah raised a hand. "We will revise internal policy to reflect clearer expectations on personal disclosures. But that does not include retroactive punishment." The room shifted. Avery felt something loosen in her chest, something she hadn't even realized was locked tight. After the meeting, as partners filed out, Victor stormed out without looking back. Elijah approached Avery quietly. "You're sharp," he said. "Dangerous in the best way. Just be careful. There are men in this industry who don't lose easily." Avery met his eyes. "Neither do I." Later that day, Nathan knocked softly on her office door. "You all right?" She looked up, exhaled slowly. "I don't know. Relief feels weird." Nathan stepped in, closed the door. "I was proud of you." You didn't need to back me up the way you did. Yes, I did, he said. Not because of Zoe, because of you. Avery studied him. I spent 5 years building a life without you. Do you know what that does to a person? I've spent 5 years trying to forget someone I didn't even know the name of, he replied. And it didn't work. You were everywhere, even when you weren't. They stood in silence. Then Nathan said, Zoe's school has a field day next Friday. She asked if I'd come. She told me, Avery said, a small smile tugging at her mouth. She said if you don't show up, she'll tell everyone her dad's a hologram. Nathan laughed softly. I'll be there, as real as it gets. As he turned to leave, she called after him. Nathan. He turned back. She's never had a man show up for her like that. Don't be the first and the last. He nodded. I won't. That night, Avery sat on the couch while Zoe colored a picture of her family, stick figures with exaggerated features, labeled in crayon. Why is my head so big? Avery asked. Because you're smart, Zoe said. And Daddy's? He's new. So I'm still figuring out what shape he is. Avery laughed. Then Zoe looked up, suddenly serious. Mommy, is this what family feels like? Avery wrapped her arms around her. It's what ours feels like. And in that moment, surrounded by crayons and uncertainty, the chaos made sense, because truth, no matter how delayed, always finds its way home. The sun was already high over the Atlanta skyline when Zoe burst through the kitchen in a blur of glitter sneakers and bouncing curls. Is he coming? She demanded. Avery looked up from her coffee, barely dodging the neon backpack Zoe was swinging over her shoulder. Good morning to you too. Mom. Focus. Is Daddy coming to Career Day? Avery grinned. He said he wouldn't miss it. Zoe narrowed her eyes, skeptical. He better not. I already told Miss Blake he's a lawyer boss who makes rich people cry. That's one way to explain it. They left 15 minutes later, Avery in her cleanest white blouse and Zoe skipping beside her like a self-declared ambassador of justice. The school gym was already packed when they arrived. Rows of foldable chairs filled with parents, briefcases, hard hats, and even one guy dressed in a fireman's suit, clearly trying to win some kind of cool dad award. Zoe scanned the crowd like a hawk, lips pursed, and then her face lit up. Nathan stood in the back corner, dressed in a navy blazer, a subtle tie, and holding a paper folder labeled Zoe's Dad in rainbow markers. He smiled the moment he saw her. Zoe took off running. He crouched just in time to catch her in a full tackle hug. You came, she beamed. I told you I would. She leaned back, studying him. You look lawyery, but not too boring. That's good. Avery stood a few feet away, watching the moment, her chest swelling with something that felt like peace. When it was Nathan's turn to present, he stood beside Zoe at the podium and spoke with warmth and ease. I'm Nathan King, he said, nodding to the room, and I'm a corporate attorney, which means I help people solve very big problems without anyone going to jail. Hopefully. The crowd chuckled. But today, he continued, I'm not here as a lawyer. I'm here because of someone special. He turned to Zoe, who beamed up at him. This brilliant, unstoppable 5-year-old showed up in my life when I least expected it and reminded me what it means to fight for something real. He looked at Avery just for a moment. Being a parent isn't about biology or proximity. It's about showing up. And I intend to keep doing that for the rest of my life. The gym erupted in applause. Zoe curtsied dramatically. On the way home, she held both their hands like she'd done it 1,000 times before. That evening, as Avery prepped dinner, Zoe sat on the floor, coloring a picture of the three of them. Nathan stood in the doorway watching. She's amazing, he said. She always was, Avery replied. You just didn't know it. He stepped into the kitchen. I know it now. And I want more. She turned, raising an eyebrow. More? I want to be part of your life too, not just hers. There was a pause. Nathan, I'm not asking for a second chance at something we never started. I'm asking if we can start something now, something honest. Avery studied him. There was no pressure in his voice, no expectation, just truth. She stepped closer. I'm not looking for fairy tales. Neither am I, he said. I'm looking for a team. She smiled. We already are one. The next few months were a quiet kind of revolution. Nathan adjusted his schedule to attend school events, pick up art projects, and learn Zoe's favorite bedtime songs. Avery pushed for internal reforms at the firm, launching a mentorship program for young attorneys, especially single mothers and underrepresented women. Elijah retired, naming her the new head of the Public Justice Division. One afternoon, Zoe came home with a drawing, a courtroom with her standing in the center. I'm going to be a lawyer too, she said. Avery knelt beside her. Why? Zoe grinned. Because you fight for people. And I like to win. Avery kissed her cheek. That's my girl. In a world that often tried to shrink her, Avery had expanded. She had turned betrayal into purpose, uncertainty into impact, and a one-night moment into a legacy that would last far beyond courtroom walls. As the sun dipped below the Atlanta skyline that evening, Zoe leaned against Nathan's chest on the couch, her eyes fluttering shut. Daddy? She murmured sleepily. Yeah, baby. Promise you'll always come back. He held her tighter. I promise. And he meant it. Because some stories don't end in shock. They begin with it. And what we do with the truth we find. That's the real legacy. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments. What would you do if a stranger turned out to be your family? Or better yet, your purpose? We'll see you in the next episode, because real stories, they never truly end. They evolve.